winter's night, but my heart still aches for those who fight for freedom's flame in the darkest light. True freedom fighters, the Mavericks we praise, blazing their trails through shadowy days. They stand unbroken, their courage shines for every soul, for all mankind. All I want for Christmas is freedom, for every maverick to lead the way. Goodwill toward men, let the light begin, and a brighter dawn for a brand new day. Break the chains of tyranny, let the world hear our rights are from a higher place, so clear. All I want this Christmas, my cheer, is freedom for all far and near. The battle's not over, the war still calls against those who build oppression's walls. But the Maverick spirit will never fade, a beacon of hope through history's blade. So we pray for strength and we stand as one, for the rights of the many and the dreams yet spun. The gift of freedom, it knows no price, born of courage, sacrifice. All I want for Christmas is freedom, for every maverick to lead the way. Goodwill toward men, let the light begin, and a brighter dawn for a brand new day. Break the chains of tyranny, let the world hear our rights are from a higher place, so clear. All I want this Christmas, my cheer, is freedom for all far and near. Let's honor the brave, the fearless, the true, the Mavericks who dare to break through. Their fights are right, they cause divine, freedom for all, for your heart and mind. All I want for Christmas is freedom, for every maverick to light the way. Goodwill toward men, let the peace begin, and a brighter world for us to stay. Stand against dictators, let justice ring, our rights from above, the anthem we sing. All I want for Christmas this year is freedom for all far and near. Ooh. This Christmas we remember the Mavericks so bold, who carry the torch in the freezing cold. Freedom's the gift, the fight never done. This Christmas we pray it's for everyone.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. So good to have you here on this December 30th of 2024. Not much time left in this year, this strange roller coaster of a year. And as we look ahead to the new year, I'm not optimistic that it's going to be any smoother, but I am optimistic that we'll make some progress somehow toward putting things back on track. That being said, tonight we're seeing Russia reject this first attempt at a peace deal from Donald Trump. We'll give you the details. You're not getting much information through other media outlets on this. So we'll show you what we have. And what else do we have? Oh yeah, the 51st state stuff. Still making waves across Canada and even in the United States. But here in my country, Canada, it's a moment where people are really showing their true colors. In some cases, it's red and white. In other cases, it's red, white, and blue. And in other cases, it appears to be very yellow. I'll be right back. Stay with me.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Let's start with Sergei Lavrov and the media reports centered on his comments today about this peace deal that appears to be that has been in the works with Donald Trump. This all really coming from TASS, the Russian state news agency. Did I just lose the tab there? No, there it is there. Okay, let me find it. There we go. Russia not satisfied with Trump team's proposal on Ukraine. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says at the same time, Lavrov noted that Moscow has not received any official signals from the United States on the Ukrainian settlement at the moment. So let's just get into this article because this is what is making headlines, I guess, on social media, but not so much with mainstream media. But this is extremely important. Russia is not satisfied with the proposals of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's team to postpone Ukraine's membership in NATO for 20 years. This is a deal that has been laid out in advance. We've been getting the preview of this over the last couple of weeks. And to deploy a contingent of EU and UK peacekeepers there, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview with TASS, Quote, judging by numerous leaks and Donald Trump's own interview with Time magazine on December 12th, he is talking about freezing hostilities along the line of engagement and transferring further responsibility for confronting Russia to the Europeans. We are certainly not satisfied with proposals made by representatives of the president-elect's team to postpone Ukraine's membership in NATO for 20 years and to deploy a peacekeeping contingent of UK and European forces in Ukraine, the top diplomat emphasized. He goes on and says, at the same time, Lavrov noted that Moscow has not received any official signals from the United States on the Ukrainian settlement at the moment. Until January 20th, the date of inauguration, Donald Trump has the status of president-elect, and all policy on all fronts is determined by the incumbent president and his administration. And so far, only the latter is authorized to engage with Russia on behalf of the United States. From time to time, as we are regularly informed, this happens, but there is no talk of negotiations on Ukraine in such contacts, the Russian foreign minister explained. So what we're hearing is that so far, no deal. And Trump isn't really in a position at this point to broker the deal officially because he's just the president-elect. So as much as he's trying to not just hit the ground running, but take a preliminary run or a run at this in advance of becoming president, he doesn't really have the authority yet to sign anything because he's the president-elect, and this can't really get done until he is inaugurated and officially president. So it's still coming through the Biden administration, but we all know what the real deal is. Trump saying that he's going to try to get this thing kick-started and making attempts to do that, and then we're getting this forward-facing or public-facing rhetoric or commentary, comments from Lavrov on the Russian side saying nope. And this shouldn't really surprise anybody who's really been studying this. Russia, Putin, Lavrov, speaking on behalf of Putin and Russia, they're not in a place where a deal like this is going to appeal to them. They have to sell this on the home front. And it's not, this is not something that I think this doesn't mesh with the current narrative that Russia is spinning up for domestic consumption back in Russia. They've had a lot of soldiers killed. There's been a lot of death. They've paid a very high price to do what they've done so far. In the estimation of many people, this has been a major miscalculation by Vladimir Putin going into Russia in this way. And Russia has paid an extremely high price for something over the past 3 years that Russia was supposed to have taken care of in a matter of about a week. It hasn't really turned out the way that people were told it would turn out. And so, at this point, Putin needs to save face. He's got politics to play at home. And to walk into a deal that essentially sets up a North Korea, South Korea dynamic where you have, or even a East Germany, West Germany dynamic where there you had an actual wall built, or you have a demilitarized zone, and then areas still unsettled, but essentially you have a peace deal or a ceasefire, really, in effect, is the way I understand how this deal would actually end up working. And then you have peacekeepers on the ground to keep the two sides from fighting, but the European Union and UK peacekeeper, I don't think Russia would accept that, and it doesn't appeal to them. I think the narrative is that Russia's winning this war. At least that's the spin they're putting on it, and so they have to put forward an image of strength for the people domestically, and they have to show that this has been worth it. That means he pretty much has to claim the areas that they already have, make sure that those remain in Russian control, and add some territory on top of what is currently in dispute. This is not going to fly on the home front. He's got to show that he's in control, that these negotiations will be conducted and concluded on Russian terms. And at this point, I think that anything less of complete victory in Ukraine might be unacceptable to Putin anyway. So the whole issue is supposed to revolve around NATO, but even a 20-year delay, not acceptable. Just rejected out of hand, and they're not even at the table yet, and Russia is rejecting it. So as much as I hear some people saying, why don't they just sit down and talk? And the idea that Trump can just almost unilaterally just end this because the idea that, let me just rephrase this. There are a lot of people who seem to think that this is a one-way street, that this is all the fault of the United States, and that the United States, with Donald Trump in office, can just wave a magic wand and just end the conflict by stopping the fighting or something. And then everything will just go back to normal. Just say, no NATO in Ukraine, and then just stop funding Ukraine, and the war will be over. That, well, it might be over, but that if Ukraine surrenders and you just give the country to Russia, that's how the war ends in that scenario. You just give Russia everything they want and walk away. And that's because some people are just downright afraid, or they're not really looking at the issue realistically. It's a three-way or four-way or five-way street, really. There are other countries with interests in there surrounding Ukraine, and they're going to continue to support Ukraine and its fight for independence and sovereignty. The United States is not the only player in this. So it's not just up to Donald Trump. And what you're getting here today is the rude awakening that, of course, I said was very likely to happen. It's not that simple. He can't just walk in there and just take charge and say it's all over unless he just surrenders or forces Zelensky to surrender. And even if Donald Trump told Zelensky today, you're giving up, it likely wouldn't go down, because you still have a lot of European countries that will continue to provide support to Ukraine, and Ukraine will try to resist, because complete surrender is unacceptable on the Ukrainian side. So it's not as simple as a lot of people thought it would be. And this whole Donald Trump going to solve it in one day, not even on day one, in one day, he said, and probably even before he takes office. Well, we're seeing that it hasn't happened in one day. This has been a lengthy process already, not extremely lengthy, but they've been working on this deal now for weeks. And he isn't in office yet, and he isn't at the table yet, and Lavrov rejecting it even before the negotiations have actually begun. So I'm not trying to sit here and be extremely critical of Trump, because he has a very difficult job ahead of him, much more complicated than he led people to believe, and he's actually changing his tune a little bit on that front too. So hang on just a minute. I'm going to queue up a few more clips. We've got a lot of ground to cover tonight, and I'll be interested in finding out what you think about some of these stories, especially this ongoing talk about Canada joining the United States, or maybe being annexed by Trump to make us the 51st state.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV.
The entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Donald Trump is acknowledging that this is more complicated than even he said it would be while he was campaigning. So before he was reelected, he was saying, I'll solve it in a day, probably even before I take office. But now he's changed his tune. This is a more recent clip.
Because China and the United States can together solve all of the problems of the world, if you think about it. So it's very important. More difficult is going to be the Russia-Ukraine situation. I see that as more difficult. I don't think they should have allowed missiles to be shot 200 miles into Russia. I think that was a bad thing. And that brought the Koreans in, North Korea, another man I get along with very well. I'm the only one that does. But that did a lot of bad things. I don't think that should have been allowed. Not when there's a possibility, and certainly not just weeks before I take over. Why would they do that without asking me what I thought? I wouldn't have had them do that. I think that was a big mistake they made.
Will you reverse that decision when you're in office to let those
I might, yeah.
missiles be
I thought it was a very stupid thing to do.
And when you
What should Zelensky, if anything, be prepared to give up to end this war?
Journalists saying, what should Zelensky be prepared to give up?
To make a deal. That's all. Got to be a deal. No, got to be a deal.
Got to be a deal.
Too many people being killed. That is a war that's hard. Too many people. Got to make a deal. And Putin has to make a deal too.
What deal?
Do you think?
Putin has to make a deal, and Putin would have never gone in if I was president. If I was president, we wouldn't have had inflation. Our oil prices would have been lower. I had a good relationship with Putin. He would, despite the Russia hoax, which made it more difficult. If we had that election, if it were an honorable election, we wouldn't have had any of the problems that we're talking about right now. Putin would have never gone in.
Before you take office, do you still think you can make that deal?
In peace, will you, journalist question again, ask Putin to give up Assad? Well, I
hadn't thought of it. I think we have to get on with our lives. We'll have to see what happens. But right now, Syria has a lot of, there's a lot of indefinites. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Syria. But I think Turkey is going to hold the key to Syria, actually. I don't think you've heard that from anybody else, but I've been pretty good at predicting.
And there you go. So there he is saying the Ukraine situation is going to be difficult to solve. We'll see what happens as he gets. We'll see what happens after he's inaugurated. Day one. Day one. Everything's going to be solved on day one. We will see. Now, and a lot of other people very skeptical as well. This is, I came across this on social media. I want to share this with you as well. And this ties into what we just talked about here, and also Trump's recent comments about the 51st state. I guess it's kind of a segue from one to the other. unintentional, but that's kind of what this is, because these matters are intertwined, connected. Run the clip for you. And this is a perspective. I don't think it's the kind of perspective that probably anybody over here has, but listen to this.
So you've been wondering why Donnie Boy's been picking fights with our friendly hockey-loving neighbors to the north? All you really need to do is get out your globe. Because when you look at the globe and you go up to the very top and you focus on the Arctic, you'll notice that one of the other major countries besides Canada that has huge parts of the Arctic is none other than Russia. So now there's a lot of oil and natural gas in the Arctic Circle, and Canada has rights to a lot of it, and as well as the maritime rights for shipping lanes and so forth. And now Russia wants those, and they've been fighting Canada over them for years. Now Greenland also borders large swaths of the Arctic. And now, especially with the onset of global warming and less ice up there, it opens up fishing possibilities and other drilling possibilities, which are Vlad's best bet for increasing their economy, which is pretty much based entirely off oil and, well, now war. But so they're looking to the future, and now the Arctic's going to be important because they won't deal with global warming. So now it doesn't seem weird why Donnie Boy's picking a fight with Canada, because at the end of the day, all roads lead back to Vlad when it comes to Donnie. Pay attention, people.
Yeah, I think there might be something to what he's saying. All roads lead back to Vlad. Uh-huh. And it will be... I don't know. I don't know I don't know what Trump is going to do. I'm somewhat concerned, but at the same time, what the heck can we do except ride the roller coaster, right? He made reference to oil and gas, and it's important to note that at the end of this month, within the next, day, at the end of this month, heading into January, these gas contracts that Russia has with Ukraine for these pipelines that carry gas into Europe, they're going to end. And they're not being renewed. And it looks like Ukraine is going to shut down those pipelines. So the gas won't be delivered into Europe anymore. Now, I've heard some other online influencers, streamers, make reference to this. And I don't think, I'm not really hearing perspectives on this that make full sense from these other folks. Respectfully, they seem to think that it's, I don't know. What I do know is that this is being done for strategic reasons. Ukraine is shutting those pipelines down because Russia profits from the flow of that energy into Europe. The Russian economy is very dependent on energy revenues. And the Russian economy is already showing some pretty severe cracks. We've seen the ruble under intense pressure and a decline in value. We're seeing that I think about 40-50% maybe now of their sovereign wealth fund has been chewed up, eaten up, used up, consumed by this war. You're seeing shortages of labor on the home front. This is affecting the Russian GDP. It's not as rosy as Tucker Carlson would have you believe when he goes to eat at the new Russian version of McDonald's, or when he takes you on a little tour of a supermarket and shows you the sanitized, glossy, touristy travel video that he produced when he was over there. There are severe pressures on the Russian economy. We're having, issues here of our own as well. Russia's not as well off as they want you to believe. And that is because of sanctions, which have taken quite some time to actually begin to have real impact. And one of the reasons for that is that in the early portions of the war, the sanctions were not fully enforced. There were many exemptions given, especially for energy. And the energy has been flowing through those pipelines right through Ukraine into Europe the entire time. Now, Ukraine also profits from that because they get revenue from the contracts that they have, allowing those pipelines to carry the energy through their territory. And the other influencers I've been listening to over the past few days have been saying, well, it doesn't make any sense. Why would Ukraine shut those things down? Because they're profiting from it, and they're focused only on Ukraine and Russia. They're not really looking at the bigger picture, which is about Europe and the consumer of that energy. What I'm not hearing from those guys is this information. Over the past couple of years, European countries like Germany, which rely on that energy, they have been making arrangements to have energy delivered from other sources like liquid natural gas deliveries from even the United States. And so Ukraine now shutting those pipelines down will put far more economic pressure on Russia than it will on Ukraine, because Russia derives much more revenue from the delivery of that gas to Ukraine or to Europe than Ukraine gets from the fees associated with the pipeline contracts. So the advantage goes to Ukraine for sure. And that puts more strain again on the economy, and it makes people on the home front inside Russia feel that pain, which puts domestic pressure on Putin to end the war and come to the table. That's really, in a nutshell, what it's about. It also puts indirect pressure, or maybe more direct pressure, on the European countries that have been supporting Ukraine, because they want the war to end as well. And it shows that it shows how important the territory is. It's more complicated than some of the assessments that I've been seeing online, and it really is about cutting off the revenue and putting the Russian economy under pressure, because that's one of the keystones or the cornerstones of ending the conflict. Let us move on, shall we? We're going to talk about the economy. What about the Canadian economy? New unemployment figures out for Canada, and some people concerned because the unemployment rate is now at 6.8%. Here's Antonio talking about this issue, and then I'm going to come back and kind of refute what he says, or at least give you a slightly different assessment. Here's Dr. Doom.
All the shit at the fan today, that new jobless numbers came out. The unemployment rate came out today in Canada. We are so fucked. Like, fucked. Jumped to 6.8. Big jump. Ontario, holy shit. 7.6 unemployment in Ontario. That's fucking terrible. Like, just fucking terrible. Youth unemployment, almost 14%. Yeah, the young people are fucked. They're just fucked. Everything I talked about, the economy getting shittier, yeah, it's getting shittier day by day by day. The only good places, only good Quebec, Alberta, okay, they're doing okay. There was job creation in those provinces. Every place else, job losses, okay? This is fucked. This is not good. This is going to get worse. It's going to keep going up in Ontario. It's like 20,000 manufacturing jobs, just manufacturing. Construction's going just complete hell in a handbasket. But manufacturing, the backbone of Ontario. No, going bad. Finance, Banks had all their announcements last week. Yeah, not fucking good. Like it's like there's going to be more layoffs at banks. There's going to be continued hiring freezes at banks. It's folks, it is not fucking good. Okay, be clear, not good. So what does that mean? Only silver lining to this shitty economy that's developing? Mortgage rates will come down. Bank of Canada down. It'll keep going down next year. Looks like fixed mortgage rates might be coming down again. Coming. We'll have to watch it more closely. But definitely variable rate mortgages, and they're coming right down. You're gonna see variable rates in the 3% range soon, like middle of next year. The only growth in this country in jobs in the last 3 years has been the public sector, has been governments hiring. That's it. And if we think we can actually run a country with just people being hired in a government sector, that is completely and utterly not going to work. Like, just not. Everybody put that idea out of their mind. The government's just going to hire their way out of all unemployment. Could be communism, right? I mean, like, everybody works for the government. Yeah. Look, be careful, be thoughtful. Only good news is about mortgages, but, hold on to your job. Think about cutting expenses. This Canadian economy, it ain't going to be good next year. 2025, not good.
Oh my God. We'll just give up now. Because we're effed. I'm sorry. It struck me as just very funny because he's just so full of doom. We're effed. Everything's effed. We're so effed. It's just 6.8 we're effed. So it's really, really bad. It's so bad. It's worse than bad. It's the worst it's ever been. We're effed. Not really. Not really. See, I went and I did some digging because 6.8. Do I still have my notes up or did I lose them? Maybe I lost the notes. Look, 6.8, that's kind of about on par with the average over like even 50 years. It goes up, it goes down. Sometimes it's like 7, 7.8. Okay, here I've got my stats that I dug up, okay? So, I mean, it's not good. Don't get me wrong. It's not great, but we've been here like forever. Because our unemployment rate in Canada is just always higher than it is in the United States. In fact, in many instances, what the unemployment rate in Canada that we experience perpetually is usually at levels that on the US side would be considered, if maintained over, say, a couple of quarters, 2 or 3 quarters, it would be declared like a recession. So we got to put this into some context, okay? So over the past decade, Canada's unemployment rate has fluctuated, but the average over the past 10 years, around 6.5%. And this recent 6.8% is slightly above that average, just ever so slightly. It indicates a small uptick in unemployment compared to the norm of the last decade. Now let's look further back. Over the past 50 years, the unemployment rate in Canada has seen both highs and lows. The average over this longer period has actually been, and you're not going to want to hear this, all you doomers and gloomers, and I'm not trying to defend Justin Trudeau or the Liberals or what's going on with, their economic policies, because I don't agree with them, and I think things need to be and can be much, 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 much better. It could always be much better. But over that longer period of time, over the past 50 years, the average has been 7.6%. That's even higher than what we have right now. So I'm sorry, but we're not completely effed. It's just not quite as bad as that, okay? So therefore, even with the current rate of 6.8%. We're still below the long-term average for the last half century. This suggests that despite this increase, we're in a relatively average position historically. And that's a pretty long chunk of time, 50 years, in order to sort of analyze this. The rise to 6.8% from the previous month's rate can be attributed to more people entering the job market, more people seeking employment rather than a significant loss of jobs. That's part of what's going on here. You see, people who exit the job market, when they're out of the job market for a certain period of time, Stats Canada, the government, they actually stop even measuring them as part of unemployment. It's part of the unemployment stats. But when they re-enter the job market and start to seek employment again, they're added back into the unemployment statistics. So you've got more people entering the job market. And if you have more immigration, and I don't know what the immigration figures are right now, but that can be contributing to this as well. But 6.8, it's about average. And this increase in the labor force participation, it often reflects confidence in the job market. That's the other kind of silver lining to some of this. It's like some people, instead of seeking welfare or instead of going back to school or engaging in other activities that don't put them into the job market, they're electing instead to go and look for jobs. So that's sort of good news in a way, although it does push the unemployment rate higher when job creation doesn't keep pace. So to kind of sum this all up, while lost. That was weird. We lost our feed there for a moment, but we're back, I think. Are you guys still in the chat? Man, the internet here, I'm so frustrated with it. It's like very unstable. I don't know what the heck is going on with our internet connections, but we're back. So anyway, I'm not defending Trudeau. I think he's just botched the economy. Hang on just a moment. I'm going to take a quick break. Not sure if we're back on yet or not. Hang on. I will be right back, if we're even on the air. Hang on a second.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Yeah, just somebody calling to tell us that we might not be on the air, but we are on. So hopefully we're stabilizing now. Gonna have to do something about this internet. It's not good, and I don't understand why. Anyway, bottom line, unemployment rate 6.8%. Don't worry about it, but we don't need to commit national suicide over this or something. We certainly don't need to be giving up the country because our unemployment rate is at 6.8%. We've been here before. Now, I'm the first one to be critical of this stuff, okay? 6.8, far too high. No need for that in Canada. We should have a much lower unemployment rate, in my view, and 6.8% is not the true full picture because the government always sugarcoats these stats. The true unemployment rate is generally much higher. In fact, I would say the true unemployment rate is probably anywhere from 20 to maybe even 30% in Canada. If you really look at it and you count people who are no longer actively searching for work, I mean, the people in those tent cities, they don't count those folks because they're not actively pursuing employment, but they're unemployed. The other thing that contributes to Canada's high unemployment rates is our social welfare system, because we have social safety nets. And when someone loses their job, it generally delays their entry back into gainful employment. People will remain on employment insurance rather than take the first job that comes along. They'll wait and wait until they get a job that they feel is going to pay them the best. It gives them more time to take a job, decide whether they want another job while they're looking for work. And when you are getting at least, a portion of your income through employment insurance and a government program, you have less incentive to just jump back in and grab the first job that comes along. Studies have proven that, and that's what also contributes to Canada's overall general higher unemployment rates versus the United States. It's just one of many, many factors. Also the size of our economy, and the seasonal nature of some industries in parts of Canada, like the fishing industry, for instance. So these are more complex things. Bottom line is we're gonna find a way forward. We will survive as a nation. I'm convinced of that, if people actually want that. But do we want that? Kevin O'Leary, I think, as much as he's talking about forming a European or style economic union with the United States in response to Trump's 51st state rhetoric, I think even he wants to maintain our sovereignty. I think when he's been sitting here talking about going down to Mar-a-Lago as some sort of unofficial ambassador to negotiate a deal for an economic union with the U.S., I think even he's probably looking at that as a way to promote Canadian sovereignty in the face of talk of annexation. Here's Kevin O'Leary again today. I think this is from today, elaborating on his recent comments on mainstream media interviews. I think he was on Fox, if I'm not mistaken, when he first said that I'll go down to Mar-a-Lago and negotiate this European-style economic union between Canada and the U.S.
Kevin, we understand you're headed to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President-elect Trump. You have said you want to broker a deal that will create an economic union between the U.S. and Canada. Is that right?
Yes, there's no reason to be fighting. We've been talking about this for decades, and I think the time is right. What I did, and I've been doing this now for about 48 hours, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from the Canadian public. I enjoy a very large social media following there. So I said to them, look, what deal do you want? And they definitely don't want to give up their sovereignty, but they really want to explore this idea of an economic union, because Canada, but you think about the 40 million people, size of California, unlimited resources, unlimited power, unlimited gas, unlimited water, unlimited lumber, unlimited everything. And they're not stupid. They're thinking, wait a second, what if we had free trade east, west, north, south? And that we put all our resources in, instead of squabbling on our own border between Canada and the United States, and put all that money up into protecting ourselves against the Chinese and the Russians up north. That all makes sense to Canadians. They just don't want to give up their sovereignty, just like somebody born in Louisiana doesn't want to be born somewhere else. They want to say, look, I was born in Calgary, whatever. But the way to solve for that is a passport, no different than the EU. Any American get it, any Canadian can get it, get the background check. They're starting to like that idea a lot more than the idea of selling out the whole country.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what kind of headway you can make with the president-elect. I feel like he would be open to something like that.
I think he's a great negotiator, and he throws out these outlandish ideas, and then what falls through the cracks is the winning stuff. I really think the two countries should get together, and I'm licking my chops at the opportunity of being involved, because right now we've got a leadership that's collapsing. Justin Trudeau is on his way out, so for the next 5 months, there's a void in Ottawa. As I like to say, thank goodness I'm here.
No ego there or anything. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be the guy negotiating it, but he's getting some traction on social media and getting clicks, likes, shares, and attention even on mainstream media. So kudos to Kevin O'Leary. Now, Danielle Smith also, in this case, I think, kind of doing Justin Trudeau's job for him, Premier of Alberta, back on Fox News, being asked about the 51st state issue, and very skillfully walking a diplomatic line here, while looking at mainly, I'd say, for the interests of Alberta, the province of Alberta, but also Canada as a whole. Check it out.
On Fox Business earlier this morning. So the Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith, is here.
Audio's a little lower.
There are way too many barriers for Canada to join the United States in terms of statehood, but why do you think the idea of statehood is resonating with Canadians?
I think it's resonating with Americans more than Canadians, frankly. I think there's a number of Canadians who are really concerned that what started off as a joke seems to keep on coming back and back and back. What Canadians really want is a preservation of the incredible trading and defense partnership that we've had with the Americans since our founding. We are the largest trading partner with the United States. We buy more goods from the United States than anyone else. Mexico is second. We buy more goods, in fact, than Germany, Italy, France, the UK, and Vietnam combined. So we have a very strong relationship. What we're worried about here is a 25% tariff that could potentially disrupt that cross-border trade flow. So I think there are some people putting forward ideas about how that might be resolved. I personally think the way it would be to resolve is to have no tariffs, as we've had in the past, and get back to talking about some of the other trade irritants that are causing the new incoming president to have concerns about Canada as a partner.
Well, and you and I have talked before about the border between the U.S. and Canada. There's now a $1.3 billion security proposal on the Canadian side. Last Friday, the Canadian foreign minister and the finance minister met with President-elect Trump, as well as the border czar. Out of that meeting, one official saying that President-elect is more focused, away from little of the border, but to the trade deficit that the U.S. has Canada. What do you make of all that?
Well, if you look back a few years, in sort of around 2015, Canada actually had the trade deficit with the U.S. I think that's a demonstration of how balanced our trade is sometimes we have a deficit and sometimes you do. And often it's really related to commodity prices. As we know, in the last 10 years, commodity prices have gone up, and that pretty well explains most of that difference. But that's also beneficial to Americans. I mean, America is looking for where they're going to get critical minerals. How are they going to make sure that they have enough oil and gas to keep gas prices low? Where are they going to be able to get food product to process and then ship around the world, including back to us? And so I would say that that if we can take the issue of commodity prices out of the mix, we actually have what it is that the U.S. president is looking for, is a fair and balanced trade relationship. I think that personally that the president has good reason to turn his sights to other jurisdictions that that have a massive trade deficit, are not buying the equivalent amount of American goods, and that seems to me to be where his issue lies. wise, I think Canada will continue to be a really great trading partner with the United States, and that balanced trade is what other countries should be aspiring to.
Yeah, and to your point, Canada's ambassador to Washington says that the trade deficit last year was $75 billion, but a third of that was energy exports, where the U.S., and that's where the deficit looks bad, is when oil prices remain high. Canada has, one of the U.S.'s closest allies. The Prime Minister, though, is facing an election in 2025. Is all of this hurting his re-election chances?
Most definitely. I mean, I think you're beginning to see even his own party is calling for an election or for him to resign. I've been calling for an election for some time. We are now with the United States and the inauguration on January 20th, facing a president who has a 4-year mandate. We certainly need to have a leader here who has an equal mandate, a 4-year mandate, so that these negotiations can continue and there's the credibility at the table. So I think there does need to be an election sooner rather than later. And I hope that we don't end up seeing really massive tariffs and a beginning of a trade war in the meantime. I think that would be terrible for both Canadian consumers and American consumers. Because to your point about energy, part of the benefit you get from having Canadian energy is if we had a 25% tariff, it would cost $1 a gallon more. And I don't think American consumers want that.
We're running out of time. I want to get this in 15 seconds. You're coming to the inauguration of President-elect Trump. Why is it important for you to be here for that?
Because of all of the trading partners, and we have provinces instead of states. The Alberta has a $188 billion cross-border trade relationship with the United States. I want to talk to as many members of the incoming administration as I can to make sure that trading partnership stays strong, and know that we're here as a friend and ally. We're here to help.
And warm things up. I appreciate it. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And I would say her words were chosen carefully, and she did a great job. I think that Danielle Smith is a strong representative for Alberta, and in this case, all of Canada, while Justin Trudeau seems to be flailing and failing, and we're freezing again. This internet is terrible. Yeah, he is in trouble, and we've seen even in the last 24 hours, his close friend and former main advisor, Gerald Butts, come out and has indicated that he believes Trudeau will step down as leader of the Liberal Party. And that means that we will probably be looking at a leadership convention, which will take place over a number of months, and then maybe an election mid-summer if all of that goes down the way that it is likely to go down. I've been saying we're likely going to get into an election by spring, early summer, and I think that's really where we're going to end up. I think he will resign as soon as they come back from the Christmas break, even though the Conservatives have this plan to try to force a confidence vote on January 7th through committee meeting that is coming up. I'm not sure that it will actually work. I think that the entire process will play out after the Christmas break. Trudeau will resign. You'll get an interim leader in place, and then they'll have a leadership convention, and then shortly after that, we go to the polls, folks. So that's my prediction. And Gerald Butts kind of reinforcing that. I could easily be wrong. Trudeau also providing indications even yesterday that he's looking for some way to hang on, especially with that promotional video that came out where he's looking ahead to 2025. But I'd say that's more of a party-wide or just a general Liberal Party or government look-ahead promotional video. I wouldn't put too much stock in that as being an indicator of what his personal plans are. He's feeling the pressure. He's feeling the heat. And it's just a matter of time before he goes. Now, with all of that pressure on him to go, a lot of people talking about going to the United States, but not everybody. We're getting Some people pushing back on social media. Viewer discretion advised, because the F word comes up here again. Because I'm seeing posts like this from some people who actually still love their country. That's a direct message to Donald Trump, trying to float trial balloons to see if the annexation of Canada might be something Canadians will accept. Threatening language overall, really. And Jagmeet Singh coming out with this, also criticizing Trudeau. But I don't know, this kind of, in a way, rings hollow as well for me, because, well, he's sitting there criticizing Trudeau. This is the guy who has been propping Trudeau up since the last election. Minority government without the support of the NDP, the Trudeau Liberals would fall, and we would have been into an election a long time ago. But he keeps on voting in alignment with Trudeau and the Liberals in the House, and it's not sitting well with a lot of Canadians. And this, in this case, seems like an exercise in hypocrisy in many ways.
The Canadian dream is a good job that gets you a home and a fridge full of groceries, with enough left over to save for vacations. A country where we take care of our neighbors, and healthcare is there as soon as you need it. But Justin Trudeau and his government keep letting people down. And there's another threat to the middle class. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives will take from you to give more to CEOs. It's favors and giveaways for billionaires while they cut healthcare, housing, and pensions. I got into politics to fight for people. It's why I fought for dental care, even when Justin Trudeau said no. It's why I won't let Pierre Poilievre cut your healthcare or let Donald Trump take your job. I don't back down, I don't give up. I'm always ready to fight. Stand with me this time. No matter who you voted for in the past, together we can fix healthcare, build homes you can afford, and lower your bills with a government that works for you for a change.
He doesn't back down, doesn't give up, especially after his pension is guaranteed. And he's going to get to that. He's going to get to that date. He's going to get his pension. And now he seems more ready and willing to have an election called. For those of you who don't understand, you have to serve so long as a sitting member of parliament in order to get your big pension. And Jagmeet is just about reaching the threshold for that. But if an election is called too early, he doesn't get his pension. He's going to get to that date. Then he'll pull the rug out from underneath Justin Trudeau. So, yeah, he doesn't give up. He doesn't quit. A lot of Canadians, though, I'm seeing, not a lot. I don't know how many. I should do a general poll, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll do some streeters. That would be a good idea. We'll go out onto the street at some point and just get people's comments on this. But I have seen some prominent social media figures, and I'm not going to use their names, over the past couple of days, just saying that they're basically throwing in the towel. They're just giving up, and they're in one case, one guy's flying the American flag. And this is a guy that a lot of people follow. He's supposed to be a patriot. Well, I find that concerning, but at the same time, I really don't care. People saying that they're ready to leave the country, they're going to move away and go join the United States. They like the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state, and they're ready to even just move out of the country right now and go to the U.S. Well, nobody's stopping you, man. Go ahead. Be my guest. No, nobody's saying don't go to the States. You can go right on down there if you want to. But I don't quit. Like, I really don't. I've been sitting in this chair far too long fighting for the country to just pack it in, bend the knee, and start waving the stars and stripes. It's not about that. And I love the U.S., but I want my country. This is what I'm fighting for. And we deserve to exist. I also hear some people, using some pretty alarming language. And I just want to warn everybody again, be careful who you follow. Be careful what advice you take from people, and be careful how you let how you might absorb some of the information or suggestions that people are giving you. Because I'm hearing talk about the use of things, a particular kind of a thing that starts with a G and ends with an N. And I don't like that talk. Even if they're talking about it in sort of subtle ways, in terms of gun rights. Yeah, well, be very, very careful. There are some people out there who will manipulate and distort, deceive, and get people jacked up. Because some people are out there looking for not freedom, they're looking for a revolution. We've been down this road too many times over the past few years. And honestly, I'm tired, and I can't believe I'm sitting here saying this stuff again. I'm going to continue to fight for freedom as I sit here, night after night after night, and for truth. And you know what I don't need? I don't need one of those things. I understand people who advocate for gun rights, but I don't need one. As much as I see problems with this country, I'm here to fix them. I'm not running away. And some of these people have been putting themselves out there as freedom fighters and leaders. Not really. Not really. And when I see people ready to just pack it in, leave the country, immediately start waving the flag of another country, even if it's a friendly ally, and turn their back on the country because they say their country has turned its back on them, they don't get it. That's not how it works. I'm not sitting here fighting for Justin Trudeau, Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh, or any politician. I'm here fighting for the country. The country that I love. The country I want back. Back the way it used to be, kind of, and only better. Identify the problems and fix them. And preserve our sovereignty as a nation state, because we are different than the United States. And we have a lot to offer the world because of that. I went into some of that last night, and I'll continue to go into it in future nights because I love Canada. And I don't fly the Stars and the Stripes. Not because it's my country. Like, I'll fly them under the Canadian flag on Canadian soil, which is the appropriate thing to do because we're an ally and a friend and a neighbor. And we'll stand alongside the United States as an ally. When they need us, we'll be there, as we always have been, defending freedom. But I'm sure as hell not turning my back on Canada. Not when she needs me, not when she needs you, when she needs us the most, right now. And we have made progress. We are getting it back. And there are ways to do this that don't involve weapons or revolution. Because we have a democracy. Whether some people believe it or not, we really can. I truly, truly believe that. People who tell you otherwise are deceivers. They're disingenuous because they don't really want freedom. They want something much worse. They don't believe in Canada. And some people are showing their true colors right now. It ain't red and white. It sure ain't red, white, and blue either. It's just yellow. It's the easy way out, the coward's way out. It takes a lot of work to preserve a free, open society and to keep your democracy. because it's always under assault, under attack. Always under attack from people who pretend to be something they're not. And there's a lot of them around us. People are worried about foreign infiltration, foreign influence. You don't have to look very far, folks, and you don't even have to look right inside the government itself. They're around us all the time. Who are the true patriots? What's a patriot? A patriot is supposed to be somebody that loves their country, stands up for it, right? I'm a Canadian, and I'm a patriot, a true patriot. And I stand on guard for thee. If I were the devil, I wouldn't rest until I had undermined the very foundation of this nation. I would start by sowing seeds of doubt about our greatest achievements. I'd whisper into the ears of the young and impressionable that the moon landings were nothing more than an elaborate hoax, a deceitful play put on to fool the masses. If I were the devil, I'd flood the streets with poison. I'd make drugs like fentanyl easy to get, and I'd make them cheap. I'd ensure that addiction ravages families and communities, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. If I were the devil, I'd turn schools into battlegrounds of moral confusion. I'd put drag queen story hours into classrooms, not as a celebration of diversity, but as a means to blur the lines of innocence and childhood. I'd make sure that sexual messages, drug use, and the glorification of thug life permeate popular music, turning it into anthems of self-destruction. If I were the devil, I'd divide people with tales of old hatreds. I'd stoke the fires of anti-Semitism and anti-Jew hatred, ensuring that these ancient prejudices never die, but instead find new life in the hearts of the misinformed and the discontented. If I were the devil, I'd sell the seductive lie of a socialist or communist utopia. I'd promise a world of free things, knowing full well that such promises lead only to massive inflation and economic collapse. I'd ensure that the disillusionment of these false promises erodes trust in all institutions. If I were the devil, I'd erase our culture and history. I'd tear down statues, rewrite historical narratives, and twist them to fit radical political agendas. I'd make sure that the past becomes a weapon, not a lesson. If I were the devil, I'd use propaganda and information warfare to confuse the public. I'd flood the media with lies and half-truths, making it impossible for people to discern fact from fiction. I'd harness the power of artificial intelligence to create deep fakes and spread disinformation, crafting lies so convincing that they would incite men to kill each other in wars that are nothing new, just old conflicts dressed in new disguises, repeating the same tragic cycles of violence and hatred. If I were the devil, I'd leave people so bewildered and lost that they wouldn't know what is real and what isn't. In this state of confusion, they'd lose faith in everything: their government, their neighbors, their own sense of right and wrong. They'd become paralyzed by doubt, easy prey for manipulation and control. And in this fog of uncertainty, I'd make them believe that their country isn't worth saving, that their values and traditions are relics of an oppressive past, I'd trick them into hating themselves, into thinking that they are the enemy, convincing them to tear down their own society. Through this act of national suicide, I'd achieve my ultimate goal, a nation so divided, so self-loathing, that it collapses from within. In short, if I were the devil, I'd keep on doing what I'm doing. But you, the people of this nation, have a choice. You can see through the deception, stand peacefully for what is right and good, and protect what you love. For the devil's greatest trick is making you believe you are powerless. Yet it is within your power to save your country, to cherish individual rights, your history, and to build a future that honors the truth and fosters a united effort to restore and protect our freedom.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Out in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, police have issued a dangerous person alert in relation to a double homicide investigation. I'm going to pull up this story so you can see a picture of the person of interest. Here we go. There's a picture issued by Calgary police of a dangerous person, they say, dangerous person alert. Benedict Kaminsky, 38 years old. They issued this dangerous person alert for the city and surrounding area, linked to a double homicide investigation. The investigation began last night. Calgary police searching for this man. Again, there's a picture. 38-year-old Benedict Kaminsky. This after the discovery of bodies of a man in his 70s and a woman in her 30s on Sunday at two different locations in the city of Calgary. Police had originally said the public was not at risk, given that the deaths are believed to have been targeted and domestic in nature, but on Monday, this afternoon, Inspector Lee Wayne explained the reasoning behind the issue of this dangerous person alert. He says they don't want anyone to interact with the individual at a news conference that was held. So if you see this guy, don't interact, but they want you to call police. So police first responded to a person in medical distress in the 100 block of Kincora Grove Northwest in Calgary's Kincora neighborhood around 9:30 last night. And when police arrived, they found this man in his 70s who had passed away already, declared deceased at the scene, I believe. And then later, about 2 hours later, they found a second victim. They believe the second victim is the man's daughter. And this woman was in her 30s, found in the 300 block of Tuscany Ridge Heights, Northwest, in the city's Tuscany neighborhood. And police say the timeline of the killings remains unclear. At this point, the investigation continuing. He says other family members are safe and are receiving support. We'll continue to follow that story, provide updates if and when appropriate or necessary to do so. And back to the story about Canada becoming the 51st state. Some people finding some humor in this. This is a post from Mark Nixon. I don't know Mark Nixon. I've never heard of Mark Nixon before, but this guy is funny. And I want to share this with you tonight because he has his own proposal for Donald Trump. And I like this guy's proposal maybe even better than Kevin O'Leary's. Here he is.
I have a message for Donald Trump from the people he likes to call the 51st state. Governor Trudeau has been on a permanent vacation since he met with you at Mar-a-Lago. He refuses to acknowledge your continuous posts about becoming the 51st state of America. Not once. He is straight up hiding, and guess what? He absolutely despises being called weak. So, in his absence, the Canadian people would like to speak to you. First of all, we do not want to become the 51st state. We acknowledge that our current leadership is weak, woke, and broke Canada. That is why a lot of Canadians would actually accept becoming the 51st state, something that was absolutely unthinkable just 9 years ago. Canadians are desperate and they're literally willing to accept anything just to get Justin Trudeau out. So the people of Canada have a proposal for you. We 100% do not want Justin Trudeau to resign. No. And guess what? It doesn't benefit you and it doesn't benefit the people of Canada. And I'll tell you why. It's because if he resigns, we have to wait 3 months for a leadership race. And then once that occurs, we have to wait another 37 days for the election to occur. That means if he steps down, we need to wait till July to have an election in Canada. So what I'm proposing to you is you tell Justin Trudeau that he needs to have a snap election immediately, or you will impose 1,000% tariff on Canadian imports on day one. And the tariffs will stay until that snap election is announced and a date is set. With 1,000% tariff, we will have an election in Canada by February, latest in March. We understand that the Liberals have bashed you 197 times in the House of Commons, calling you right-wing and MAGA, and called Pierre Poilievre the Maple Leaf MAGA of Canada. We also know you absolutely despise talking to Chrystia Freeland, let alone negotiate with her, and we know you don't want to negotiate with Trudeau either. Why would you strike a deal with someone that's going to be out automatically in 10 months or less? Having a February or March election would benefit the U.S. tremendously. That way, you could start negotiating a tremendous deal right away. It's easy making great deals with common sense people making common sense deals. It's a two-way win. Together with Canada and the U.S., we would create the fastest growing economies ever recorded in history. Together, we are stronger. On day one, we will remove the cap on oil and gas and unwind all of the radical environmental policies. We will provide you with the resources that you need. It's a no-brainer. And hey, if you still want to call us the 51st state, go ahead. But we will be our own nation. You don't want the 20% of liberal voters that we have left to become American, do you? A message from the 51st state of Canada.
No, he doesn't want the 20% of liberal voters who are left to become American. Yeah, I don't think so. Folks, we're going to leave it there for tonight. What's tomorrow? 31st, New Year's Eve. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. 2024. Good riddance. Goodbye, 2024. We can say goodbye to it together tomorrow, live right here on the Maverick News channel. Love you guys. Take care of each other. Love each other. Stay sane. It's going to be okay. As much as there's doom and gloom out there, it's going to be okay. And 2025 going to be a rough year too. I know it. It's just going to be. But anything worth having is worth fighting for, right? So keep loving your country too. We're going to make it. See you guys tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.